Hey guys, it's Big 8 here. I'm feeling under the weather right now. But, only time I can do this for the podcast tonight and this next live streaming. So, welcome to Let's Watch a Discussion. Well, I'm going to attempt to watch this video without hurting my head. Hopefully, I get through with all of it. I've only seen 5 minutes of this so far, not even that minute, and I already heard, and it made me feel stupider. But hopefully, I get through it. Alright. Let's do this. Alright. Music's a little loud. Turn down a little bit.
We have got it finally after a week, and last night with some confusion, we are happy to announce that we have Aronra and Kent Hovind both in person here tonight. This is going to be a historic night, I think. We're going to have a really good show, and I thank, first of all of you guys out there for joining us. We do episodes every Saturday at noon. You can visit www.nonseqshow.com, and that's NONSEQ show.com. You can also check out the guests that we have coming up, just to kind of give you an example of the shows that we have coming up in the coming weeks. We have Nate Dern from funnyordie.com, who is going to be coming on to talk about his new book, Not Quite a Genius. We are also starting a new segment with Pamela Whistle, who is the membership director of American Atheists. And they get all kinds of hate mail and voicemails every week. So she's going to be coming on once a week to kind of go through those voicemails and emails, and it's really fun. I mean, it's going to be really funny. At this time, I'm going to hand it over to my co-host, Steve McCrae, who will introduce the two contenders that we have tonight, and we'll go from there. So enjoy the show, everyone.
Well, I don't think either one of these gentlemen kind of need any kind of introductions by now. I think anybody knows who they are. However, for this discussion, I think that they both should spend at least a minute or two kind of introducing themselves, giving their position and why they're having this discussion, and then we'll kind of jump right into it and kind of have just a free-for-all organic conversation between the both of them. Ken, I want you, if you're possible, can you start, give about explain who you are, your position, and then we'll have Aaron do the same.
Certainly. Yes, sir. Thank you for having me here. I'm 65 years old. My name's Kent Hovind. I've been a Baptist, ordained Baptist preacher since 1974. I taught high school science and math in Christian schools for 15 years. I've been a full-time evangelist speaking on creation versus evolution for about 30 years now. I take the position that the Bible is literally true and scientifically accurate, and the evolution theory is the dumbest and most dangerous religion in the history of humanity. And those are the nice things we say about it.
How nice of you.
Okay. Is that all you want to say?
Well, yeah, we're building a Christian park in a campground, actually, in Lenox, Alabama, straight north of Pensacola. Dinosaur Adventureland. It'll be a simple science experiments to teach biblical lessons, and you guys can come on down. We have a lot of fun. We have 10 lakes on the property. Someone gave us the property, and we're having all kinds of things. We hope to be open April 21st. My website is drdino.com, and the phone number, 855-BIG-DINO, extension 3, takes right straight to my cell phone. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you very much. Aaron, why don't you go ahead and take a minute or two, kind of tell people who you are and your positions on all this.
My name is Aronra. I had it legally changed for my state senate position, and because it's the name that I wanted to appear when I both ran for office, and of course also on my book. It's on all my publications for the last 10 years, and it's on my driver's license, my credit cards, Wikipedia, all of that. So I am the Southwest Regional Director of American Atheists, and I'm the director of the Phylogeny Explorer Project. And we do, my wife and I, we do educational videos, and I have a channel of 160,000 some odd subscribers where we counter creationism.
Okay.
And of course, my book available on Amazon is The Foundational Falsehoods of Creationism, and is very highly rated. And Mr. Hovind is mentioned in it numerous times.
Well, yay. Thank you, sir.
All right, awesome. So what we kind of figured was, because it's not going to be a structured debate, and there's so much that I think you gentlemen have to discuss, I'm just going to kind of throw it over to you guys. And Kyle and I kind of going to step back, let you guys have this a very free-flowing, organic conversation. Aaron, why don't you kind of start us off? Or I think that Kyle had mentioned before that maybe there's something that Kent wanted to mention, or did you kind of bypass that, Kent?
Kent wants to go on about something first.
Okay, that's fine. If Kent, you want to start on that, and I know you said it may take a while, but if Aaron's kind of cool with it, then you want to lead in with that, and we can go from there.
Yeah.
No, Aaron had done a YouTube 4 or 5 days ago, and I already did a quick YouTube for our listeners, but technical problems. It's not posted yet. It's coming though, so I don't need to do that. Let Aaron go first. I'd like to hear his position.
All right. Well, my position is that obviously counter yours completely. I mean, I would say that the reason that the Bible is absolutely wrong about absolutely everything is because it was obviously written by ignorant, bigoted, primitive, superstitious savages who clearly had no idea what they were talking about. And that's why there's nothing that can be verified accurate, but a whole lot that is laughably stupid about what the Bible describes about the world. In fact, the way everything the Bible says about the earth in relation to the rest of the cosmos, any indication about genetics or history, anything, is embarrassingly dumb. Yeah, and there is, of course, no truth to any of your claims about evolution being a religion, for example. This is just an attempt at projection where you're trying to cast your own faults onto those who will not share them, and it's an attempt at the fallacy of false equivalence, which is what I think you meant to talk about. I'm sure, because that deals with most of your arguments, that and equivocation.
Kent?
Well, okay. Well, before we get into a discussion too far on the topic of evolution, we need to define what we're talking about. And for many years, I think you've obviously seen many times my division of that word into 6 different categories.
Oh God, the 6 categories. The stupid 6 categories of his. God. I already feel brain dying already. Alright. I need help. Come on, hopefully. I think it's Adam on here. Or Mario. Hey.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
In pain.
Oh.
Yeah, my arm. You know about my arms, right?
No, I don't.
Oh, well, basically, Saturday, I did exercises with my brother, and it was mainly lifting weight, and I guess I overdid it, partly because of my ignorance to exercise, and partly because my brother kept pushing me. So, yeah, because of that, I've been hurting for the past 3 days. And each day the pain gets worse and worse, and it's at its worst right now, or at least it's at its worst in the 3 days.
Okay.
And I don't know how much longer it's gonna be like this, but it is fucking excruciating pain.
Yeah, I have a cold right now myself. Not bad as you, but like, but yeah. So
Yeah.
So then you're busy right now then.
I mean, if you're asking if I'm busy in terms of dealing with pain, then sure.
Well, I mean,
yes.
I'm watching listening to a stupid video on a live stream. I wanted your help to not to hurt my brain.
What? I don't understand what you said.
Well, I'm doing a live reaction to a video.
Yeah.
And it's a stupid video. Stupid people.
Okay.
And I need someone else there to counteract the stupidity of a certain person in the video.
How long is the video?
2 hours.
Are you serious?
You can leave whenever you want to. I just need. You don't have to watch it.
Oh God.
I know it's. I've been putting this off.
What the fuck is this video about for 2 hours?
Some people arguing.
About what?
Creationism.
Oh. I mean,
I can share the sound with you. It's not really all you need is the sound. Not really no video. It's more like talking.
I mean, if you really want me to be there, then I guess. But. Yeah.
All right. Put you up on the OBS. You want your camera on or off?
Off.
Okay. Yes, I've been putting this off because I've been putting this off, but I have to do this because it's like I have to get through this eventually.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Capture 8. Stripe. All right. Shrink it down a bit. Good. Okay, come on. Okay, there. Hold on. There it goes. Okay.
Whoa! Fuck. Drop my phone.
No, damn it. Ugh, I hate OBS sometimes. There it goes.
I hate my arms right now.
So what exactly did you do?
Well, I was lifting about 55 pounds, and it was like 12 reps and 10 sets, and during the sets, I had to go down to 35 pounds. And then after that, a bunch of curls. I don't remember how many reps and sets those were. I think there was like 10 reps, and I don't remember the sets. And then squats, and that's it.
Alright, well.
While I did feel a little bit in my anywhere near to my arms pain, and my dad told me, oh, you need to stretch like this, and I'm like, okay. So I do said stretches every now and then, but the stretching doesn't seem to help whatsoever. It actually seems to make the pain even worse. And I especially noticed it today. So there's that. And I thought it was supposed to subside by now, because there's a similar occurrence where there was a different person that came years ago, and I did exercises with this person, and yeah, I was sore from it, but only for 1 day. And after that, I did not have any more pain. This has been going on for a few days now.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no clue how many more days it's going to take. They better fucking reduce tomorrow, otherwise I'm not going to be happy.
Oh. Well, if you need to pause this, just tell me so. If you need to talk about it or like hit your head on the table.
Okay.
All right.
Yes, those are inaccurate, so we're gonna go with the correct definition.
You hear that?
Kind of.
All right.
It sounds quiet.
I'm also live streaming that if you want to check out the live stream instead.
I know that you've actually bragged many times that people have corrected your misdescription of that, and it's appropriate that they correct you on this. I don't know why you don't correct yourself when you keep repeating an error. So when we talk about evolution, unless otherwise specified, because there is a colloquial meaning that doesn't apply to biological evolution or the science of evolution, or certainly the theory of evolution, which pertains only to the aspect or theory of biodiversity, which can be summarily defined as genetic variance in reproductive populations over time, or a change in allele frequencies in reproductive populations over time.
Okay,
and I can give a longer definition, but still it's going to be within the confines of biology.
Okay, so you're saying the word evolution only encompasses the living things that have already come alive somehow. So you're leaving out any kind of organic evolution, or what I would
There's no such thing as organic evolution. If we're talking about abiogenesis, that's a overlapping series of different processes. None of them are the evolutionary process, which is descent with inherent genetic modification.
Okay, so is this descent with genetic modification limited in any way, or do you think elephants and pine trees are related?
Well, definitely I think that elephants and pine trees are related, and that is a demonstrable fact, yes.
And how would you demonstrate the fact that elephants and pine trees are related?
One of the primary way is phylogeny, which is kind of what I'm all about. It's my hobby that has become, thankfully, my job. Directing the Phylogeny Explorer project, which is an attempt to depict the entire phylogenetic tree of life as a navigable online encyclopedia of the entire cladistic system.
Okay, so just for the audience's sake, you are what I would say, skipping the first 5 definitions of what I call evolution, the cosmic.
What only you and people do not know science call evolution.
Okay, I think every textbook from every public school teaches all these as part of the general overarching principle.
Except that no textbook anywhere ever describe what you describe as evolution. Unless you want to get into A. Becker or some of the other Christian deliberate misrepresentations to try to deceive students. But if you're talking about actual scientific documents, nobody agrees with the way you misrepresent this. So we're going to keep evolution as descent with inherent genetic modification.
So descent with inherent genetic modification. So they already have the ability to reproduce. They already are alive. They're already able to move, replicate, and ingest, digest food. You've already bypassed the major hurdles that are going to be a great obstacle to your religion.
I don't have a religion, we absolutely certainly do not know about to prove that.
Okay.
I want to hear your infantile definition of what a religion is. And let's see how you've explored that.
You can look it up in any dictionary. Look it up in Wikipedia.
Well, I have actually looked it up in a lot of different dictionaries. When I took a course on comparative or the history of comparative world religions, our professor there challenged us, saying that religion was something that he thought was impossible to define. I didn't think it was impossible to define because I do classification and I understand the rules for how to classify things. And as a matter of fact, I made this a little easier. I posted a collection of definitions that are relevant to this subject some years ago, back in 2012. I put something called Offerings to the Atheist Dictionary, because these are words that are comically is correct, that are comically misrepresented whenever you're arguing with creationists. The definition of religion that I came up with by examining all the different things that are universally accepted as religion by both their adherents and their critics are a doctrine of ritual traditions, ceremonies, mythology, and associated dogma of a faith-based belief system which posits a posthumous promise that some element of self, be it a soul or consciousness or memories, etc., may in some sense continue beyond the death of a physical being. Now this applies to every religion that is universally accepted as a religion, and evolution, however, meets exactly none of these criteria. So I want to hear what you define as a religion, and how we can distinguish things that are not religion from things that are.
Okay, I would like to ask Kyle or one of the moderators to kind of keep time here. Aaron keeps over-talking me and not much of the conversation.
Sorry.
Discussion, I would like equal time. Okay.
He's asked you a question. We're going to give you ample time to respond to his question with a direct answer.
I have up on screen the definition of Random House Webster's.
Yeah, so
basically, it sounds like he's trying to deny the the dictionary definition of religion and evolution. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. The Kent guy thinks evolution is a religion,
Oh, he does. Oh,
and
oh
the and
no.
the and the yeah, and the Aaron guy is trying to teach him what it really is.
How do you have a fucking science thing that's been proven to be real turned into a religion? I don't understand that. That's like saying, oh, the body healing a layer of skin is a religion. Watch. Whoa. The gods did that. The gods healed my skin. Whoa. Like, dude, shut the fuck up.
Yes, that's why I need someone else here with me so I don't hurt myself.
Like, seriously, that's stupid. Even the fucking... You know how Hawk says that his friend made the potato religion?
Yeah.
Well, the fucking potato religion sounds like it makes more sense than the fucking evolutionary religion.
It's because it's not a religion. Alright. Back to stupidity.
College Dictionary, Dictionary 2000, page 1116. Religion. A set of beliefs concerning the cause, nature, and purpose of the universe. That's what fits your religion of evolution.
Except that it doesn't.
It does. It's exactly
No, it doesn't, because evolution has nothing to do with the cause of the universe, nor certainly not the purpose of it.
Does it have to do with the nature of the universe, how things work?
How things work, yes,
Okay, well then you
but
have a
not with the
religion.
universe.
You believe that dogs, you believe that whales, I think so, elephants and pine trees are related. No one's
They're
ever
both
seen an
eukaryotes, are they not?
No one's ever seen an elephant produce anything but an elephant.
They are both eukaryotes, are they not?
It doesn't matter. They're both
Why
living.
does it not matter?
They're both above ground. They both
Yes, and
ingest
but
gases.
they're both eukaryotes, correct?
It doesn't matter. You're missing
It
the
certainly
point.
does matter. But
Okay.
the question is not whether it matters. The question is whether or not they are eukaryotes.
You're missing the point
No,
completely.
no, no. You are missing the point. Are they both eukaryotes, yes or no?
As far as I know, they are. That doesn't. So does
Have
that
you ever
prove
seen a
they're related?
eukaryote give birth to a non-eukaryote?
Does that prove they're related?
Within the phylogeny, yes, it does.
Okay. Now, since you keep talking about phylogeny and said this is your area of expertise, I would like to ask you. You were on a show called the Non Sequitur, which I think is classic. A non sequitur is a conclusion or statement that does not logically follow from the previous argument or statement. I think we can give examples of elephants producing elephants and pine trees producing pine trees. It does not logically follow that they are related.
Oh, and
Wait a minute, stop this for a second.
Yeah.
Can I just ask how does it... Oh, what the fuck? Oh, apparently something fell in my mouth. How disgusting. Anyways, so, how does a pine tree produce pine trees? I mean, like, does it do more just suddenly grow?
like
Because
the same way all plants grow, like pollen, like flowers, like something gets the seed, like all things, like the plants, the daddy plant part and the mommy plant part to get together and make a seed.
Oh, okay. Well, even then, the guy still has a point. There's proof that elephants do indeed make elephants and not pine trees. And I think that we can all see the proof. And it has happened for a long, long time.
Yeah.
So, I don't understand how a fucking animal is literally coexisting in the same, like, I guess, blood, quote unquote, with a fucking tree.
Well, they're not the same blood. There's like they both.
Well, I used blood because I couldn't remember the term I wanted to use, so I just used it as a placeholder.
I think
So I didn't mean to use that,
Yeah.
like, officially.
Well, I think the thing is they both have the same kind of cells or something like that. I think that the group they're both in the same cell group. They both have like a certain kind of cells. But anyways, Games for Us wants to know where Brandon is. I don't know where Brandon is. He's in chat, and he said pine trees drop pine cones at him. Pine cones are seeds.
A pine cone is an actual seed?
Yeah. He's in chat right now.
Jesus Christ. I didn't know a fucking pine cone was a seed. Damn, that's a big-ass seed, then.
It is. Yeah, he also wants to know where Brandon is. He put this do something together, but Brandon never showed up.
Didn't even talk to him today, so I couldn't tell you.
Sorry for that. We have no idea where he's at.
Not logical follow. I need to explain to you that you've been repeating incorrectly for years. I've been listening to you get this wrong for 20 years, and I'm delighted that maybe I'm the first person out of all the people you talk to. It can't be that I'm the first person to address this, but I keep hearing you repeat this error. So let me address that now.
It is not an error. It is not an error.
The law of monophyly.
You are an error. You are an error.
You have no idea what I'm even going to say. And when I'm done saying it, you
guys,
won't have any idea what I said.
It reminds me of NES Legend of Zelda 2, I am error. Like, what the fuck?
You're saying. I will help you here. Religion is a belief, and you have
Don't pretend.
You have
I know
a
that you
belief.
get a life out of pretending, but that's not what we're going to do.
I'm
addressing your error. Just be very clear.
Hold it.
And
All
then
right,
you
you are the one pretending. You are pretending that a pine tree and an elephant are related. Come on, that's a pretend.
I don't
you're
need to pretend that. I'm trying to demonstrate something to you. I'm trying to explain something to you, and you're trying to talk over me to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Well, go back and listen to the tape. Who's talking over who here?
Okay, let's
talking over me. I'm trying to explain something.
Let's kind of keep this. Let's keep this to where everybody can follow. Okay.
Okay.
Kent, I'm gonna let you go and explain your thought process as to why Aaron is in error with that statement. So Aaron, please let him. Let him finish.
Let's make sure we get the names right. It's Aaron. Aronra is actually his name, not Aaron, not Eric, not whatever. It's Aaron.
Okay. Let's keep it on track so everybody that's listening can kind of follow, because you can't understand what either of you are saying when you're jumping over each other. So just let Kent finish out his thought, Aaron, and then we'll shoot over to you and you can counter. Okay.
A week ago, I asked you to ask Aaron what is the best evidence for evolution. He responded by saying it is systematic phylogenetics, and he said in his little 3-minute YouTube clip, the only way Hovind can counter that is to meet the phylogeny challenge, which no creationist will ever even attempt to do. Okay, first place, I'll help correct you a little bit here, Aaron. It is phylogenetic systematics, not systematic phylogenetics, but that's okay. According to evolution.berkeley.edu, all life on Earth is united by evolutionary history. We are all evolutionary cousins, twigs on the tree of life. Phylogenetic systematics is the formal name for the field within biology that reconstructs evolutionary history and studies the patterns of relationships among organisms. Unfortunately, history is not something we can see. That is correct. Phylogenetic, from the dictionary, just Googled it on Google here, relating to the evolutionary development and diversification of a species or group of organisms, or of a particular feature of an organism, for instance, the teeth or the bone structure, etc. And I'm holding in front of me, I'll show it from Encyclopedia Britannica 2005, a phylogenetic tree based on the nucleotide differences in the gene for cytochrome C. And they have all these creatures with lines drawn between them showing that a human, a monkey, a dog, a horse, a pig, etc., and a moth and a screwworm and a tuna are all related to a common ancestor. They draw these lines on the paper and that becomes their science. Now, I'm curious, why did they choose to use the phylogenetic tree based on cytochrome C? Why did you make a tree based on the number of chromosomes, or based on the adult body weight, or based on life expectancy, or based on life or gestation period, or based on average number of offspring, or based on the number of teeth?
To focus on derived synapomorphies.
All of these things are features, and if you do a phylogenetic tree on any of these things, you get a wildly different tree. For example, penicillin has 2 chromosomes.
Oh my God.
Houseflies and tomatoes both have 12. If you did a phylogenetic tree, you would say houseflies and tomatoes are identical twins. possum, redwood tree, and kidney beans all have 22 chromosomes. They are not identical triplets. Humans have 46 chromosomes, and chimpanzees and tobacco both have 48. So if you did a phylogenetic tree based on anything other than what you want to believe, that there's somehow a relationship, you would get wildly different answers. So I think the evidence shows very clearly that you're choosing and selecting a particular phylogenetic tree that anybody can make up. You can arrange things in any kind of order you want and draw lines between them, but all the phylogenetic trees are nothing but lines on paper that somebody decided to make a relationship. Like you think a pine tree and an elephant are related. That's a line on a piece of paper, Arn. That's not science. Science is something we observe, we study, we test, we demonstrate. Everybody that's ever done it will tell you elephants make baby elephants, no exceptions. Now, if you choose to believe, and I emphasize the word believe because it is a religious belief that you have, that elephants and pine trees are related, that's fine. I don't care what you believe. But I resent paying for that to be taught to all the kids in the school system. That is not science. That's a religion in every sense of the word. Go ahead.
In no sense of the word is that a religion, because it is not faith-based, it's evidence-based.
Oh, God.
And it has nothing to do with any purpose for anything, much less anything to do with the beginning of the universe or what came prior to it. Nor does it require a belief. I would suggest that we both start from not believing anything and just review the possibilities. And one of the things we have to look at is the law of monophyly, which is an evolutionary law. This is the one that Ernst Mayr described as Darwin's second law of common ancestry. And this is where he says that multiplication of species is Darwin's third law, and this is the one that I refer to as biodiversity. In either case, it means that one species may diversify into 2, into 4, and 8, and etc., but that in every daughter lineage, evolution is just a matter of superficial changes being compiled against successive tiers of fundamental similarities. And it is those tiers of fundamental similarities which can be interpreted as derived synapomorphies, which is what they're basing the phylogeny on. I have heard creationists argue that a watermelon is 98% water and a cloud is 100% water, and so a watermelon only missed being a cloud by 2%. Or that we could classify an octopus as being an ink pen since it spits ink, and we can classify it as a spider because it has 8 legs. And these are all deliberate attempts to avoid the fact.
Kent?
Avoid the fact of what? That an octopus is related to an ink pen? What?
Do you understand the law of monophyly? As I just described, it means that you can't outgrow your ancestry. That means at no point in evolutionary history did one kind, which doesn't exist, ever become another kind, which doesn't exist either.
You just
wait a minute. Hold the fuck up. So basically, did he just say that literally evolution just does not happen? Is that what I just heard?
Oh, he said that something cannot make something else.
But that's technically evolution, though, because fucking monkeys went from monkeys to humans. That's fucking evolution. That is literally what happened, though.
No, technically, according to him, we are still monkeys.
Oh, yeah, we're still monkeys, because we still have a fucking tail, and...
We're tailless monkeys.
Oh, tailless monkeys. Oh, yeah. Sure, bud. What fucking ever. What is your argument going to be? Oh, well, technically we have a tailbone. It's like, okay. So, that doesn't change the fact that we're humans, though.
Yeah, his argument is that whatever our ancestors were, we still are.
Okay, but...
we're still mammals, we're still animals, we're still placental mammals.
Well, okay, I'll agree that we're animals because, I mean, we're just called humans. That's what we called ourselves, just like you call a dog a dog. They're animals too. We're fucking animals. There's no doubt about it. But to say that we're still technically monkeys, I don't think is really right because, like, seriously, what can we do that monkeys can do right now? Let's be honest.
I don't know. Apparently we have we all have the same ears or something. I think. That's what there's a video series about this that And apparently we're all vertebrates. Vertebrates.
Vertebrates? What is that?
It's a thing that has the back. People have backbones. We all have backbones. Vertebrate. Can't pronounce it.
Hmm. But yes, I think that we're just not fucking monkeys because evolution has changed us to a point where we are comparably different from monkeys. We just were originally monkeys long ass time ago. That's basically what it is, and
Okay.
you know, it's been proven by science, so you can't really argue with it.
Right, and they're still eukaryotes, aren't they?
So that's all
So they're
it
still
takes.
eukaryotes, aren't they?
So that proves they're related.
Are they still eukaryotes or no?
Yes. Does that prove
Okay,
they're
good.
related?
And they never became a different kind. Ever. Did
So
they?
your definition of kind would include a pine tree and an elephant as the same kind of creature.
Are they both eukaryotes or no?
Are you drunk?
Are they both eukaryotes?
Yes.
Okay,
This
then
is
they are both
insane.
the same kind in that respect, right?
This nobody's definition of kind. Ask
Are
a
you sure?
5-year-old.
What
Ask a
happens when we
5-year-old.
look at the Bible, for example, what the Bible says about kinds?
The
How many
Bible says they
different...
wa- it
Yeah,
said-
the
oh,
Bible
listen,
mentions the
listen,
beast kind.
10
I'm curious
times.
about that.
Okay, no, wait a minute. 10 times in
We're
Genesis.
talking about, we're talking about the beast kind. Can you
Well, let me-
identify what is and isn't in the beast kind?
Well, let me say what you asked. What the Bible says. The Bible, in the very first chapter, Genesis chapter 1, 10 times says they will bring forth after their kind. So the kind has to do with bringing forth, and I can help you here. I taught biology. Elephants and pine trees cannot bring forth.
Because
Whether
of
they're
the
eukaryote-
evolutionary law of monophyly, we have
No.
one cannot become a different kind. You can speciate. You can get to a point where you have speciation, where they no longer can interbreed with the parent stock or maybe with their sister species, but they didn't become a different kind. They are still the parent category that they belonged to, and this applies to everything in the human phylogeny. We still belong to every one of our ancestral clades.
Kent, explain to everybody what you mean by kind, so that we're all on the same page. Aaron just explained what he meant, so you kind of go through what.
And Kent, can you explain in kinds in reference to what Aaron's saying in regards to monophyletic clade? When he's talking about Meyer's law of monophyly, can you kind of join them together to explain your version of a kind in relationship to something in a monophyletic clade?
Well, let's take this one.
And I don't know what that means. Games for us.
What does what mean?
It says create our working civilizations with each other.
Could you repeat that?
Games for us said create our working civilizations with each other. It's in chat.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go in chat to read that because even you repeating it didn't sound like it made sense.
One question at a time. The Bible 10 times in Genesis chapter 1 mentions the word kind, and 10 more times in the flood story, Genesis 6 and 7. So 20 times in the first 7 chapters, it talks about Noah bringing the animals, in the 6 and 7, chapter 6 and 7, bringing the animals onto the ark after their kind. So it has to do with bringing forth, and for them to get 2 of each kind on board the ark. I can assure you a pine tree and an elephant are not the same kind of animal in the biblical way of thinking, or in anybody else.
Are either one of them in the beast kind?
A pine tree is not in the beast kind, no.
But
so
an elephant is?
An elephant is a beast. It's a beast of the earth.
Okay,
Yes,
how many
animal.
different types of beasts are within the elephant or within the beast kind?
Well,
and how can we distinguish them?
Well, the current estimate is there are 7,000 or 8,000 kinds of animals on land.
How many of them are beasts?
Breathe air. That would be
how many of them belong to the beast kind?
I don't know. That's a great question.
Okay, so we have kinds within kinds? There
Well,
are
we
different
have-
kinds of beasts? There's not just the beast kind. There's also kinds of beasts within the beast kind?
Well, that's a great question. But see, I'm not asking for my theory to be taught at taxpayer expense. You are. So the
Well,
burden
yeah,
of proof's
and the
on
one
you.
I have is actually especially justified, and yours is not. Yours is for kinds, which means, did you catch when I said that the only way to address this would be to address the phylogeny challenge? Did you follow that? You even know what the phylogeny challenge is?
I do, but let's just fix
Okay,
it
what
back
is
to
the phylogeny champ?
Arn, hold on
No,
1 second. Arn.
you're-
Let him finish.
you're-
Let him finish out an answer. Go ahead, Kent. We're going to give you the
You're-
time to finish out your answer, and
Well,
Arn,
you-
let him.
Yeah,
let him
you're
get it
bringing up 5 or 6 topics. Okay, I will stand by the Bible, which says very clearly the animals bring forth after their kind. Therefore, the ability to bring forth seems to be directly related into deciding what exactly is a kind. I think we can demonstrate. I'm going to show up some pictures here we're going to video this for people. There are 200 recognized species of squirrels in the world. They are the same kind of animal called a squirrel. That's from
Is there
National
anything
Geographic.
other than squirrels that are in that kind?
In the squirrel kind, I don't know.
Is there a squirrel? Okay, so there's a squirrel kind. So God created a primordial group of pair, I guess, of squirrels.
I don't. That could.
And then he created is there a chipmunk kind as well?
Now, whether the chipmunk and squirrel are related would be a good study for biology. But
Yeah,
I think
it would. It would define what a kind is.
Sure.
So did God create 2 rodents? Wait, there's a rodent kind. So now we have squirrels, we have chipmunks, and do we have rabbits in that? Are we going to put Lagomorphs into that same kind as well?
And you're talking over me again. I don't interrupt you. Now listen, there are 200 recognized species, and I'll use the word species, of squirrels. I think they're probably all interfertile. There are 350 breeds of horses. You get into different names here, what they mean. What is a breed name? What is a species? What is a family? A genus? A kind? The biblical definition of kind was given, or the word kind was used way before Carolus Linnaeus was ever thought of. So Carolus Linnaeus came up with our current classification system. There are the horses, for instance, the horse, the zebra can interbreed. The ass, the Shetland pony, you can get a zebra, a shebra, a zebrass, a zedonk, a zeonki, a zorse.
What?
They probably are the same kind. I don't know exactly where the...
A what?
Oh my god. All those things that he just fucking said. Wow, dude. Zebra, Z-bronc, fucking
Mixing and matching
Z-struck.
Mixing and matching a horse and a zebra and a donkey and...
Oh my god. Are those even real things?
Well, yeah, I think like a mule is a donkey and a horse together. They can have They can have babies. And there's a thing called a liger, where a tiger and a lion have sex, but their babies are infertile.
Jeez, dude. This kind of stuff sounds like it's out of my fucking league. Because so far, everything I've, said seems to be out of ignorance. I mean, to me, it just sounds stupid, but, there's a lot of things that they're saying that I don't actually know about, so
Yeah.
this is kind of a hard one. I gotta go get eye drops real quick. Hold on.
Okay. That's why I like to learn about new things. Alright. I agree. Games for us. Which guy don't you understand? The Kent guy or the Aaron guy? Yeah, the Kent guy just got out of prison for taxes, 10 years. Alright. Oh, God knows. Running.
I'm back.
All right.
The line is, but I think it's pretty obvious in most cases that.
Well, clearly
that
not.
Well, for heaven's sake, Aaron, you think a pine tree and an elephant are the same kind? What on earth is wrong
But
here?
you think there are kinds within kinds, and that we have the squirrel kind and we have the chipmunk kind, both within the rodent kind. So it sounds like you're defining what clades are, which of course would all connect to each other because trees and elephants are both eukaryotes, as we said. So at what point do we get to where God created a primordial pair who then diversified into all these other clades?
Well, that, like I said, would be a great field of study.
That's the phylogeny challenge.
Well,
So
the
you have to
phylogeny.
show me, and I made a video about this for anybody that's curious. Please look up the phylogeny challenge. It is the death knell for all creationist arguments because it can't be
Whoa.
addressed.
So Aaron, you're
death-
asking in the phylogeny challenge for the original type of pair that created all the other supposed kinds and subclassifications.
Yeah, if there's any truth, if there was any truth to creationism whatsoever, or if the theory of evolution was fundamentally flawed in any way, then there would have to be a point where, as Kent does, he accepts a certain degree of phylogeny, but it has to trace back to an original set of created kinds. And it can't be, well, that would be an interesting question since they're both rodents, and both rodents are eutherians, and all eutherians are mammals, and you can trace it all the way back to eukaryotes.
Would that have
So
to
where
actually
is the
include
dividing
speciation
line?
races too? For the
I'm sorry?
with the phylogeny challenge, would it also have to show and demonstrate speciation rates to show this original mating pair to diversify to all these species that are out there relating to whatever the original kind that Kent is referring to?
Well, the speciation rate isn't really relevant unless you put a time constraint on it.
7,000 years.
Okay,
Well, yeah, if he's going to imply his own time constraint, then he has this issue
Okay.
that he would have to address as well, because that's
Okay,
just going to further complicate his position.
I will gladly address that if you stop interrupting and bringing up 20 more topics. Okay.
It's the
Now-
same topic. It's been the same topic.
Okay, the Bible says they will bring forth after their kind. I will make the statement that probably Noah had 2 squirrels on the ark. They have diversified into 200 species of squirrels. Black ones, white ones, brown ones. That is not evident, and that could happen in 4,400 years. We have 339 breeds of dogs that have been developed in the last 300 years. Yes, it can happen very quickly. There are biological factors, like the Kaibab and the Abert squirrel, just by geographic isolation across the Grand Canyon, have developed and look pretty different. Whether they're still reproductively capable, I don't know. I have to put them together and find out. There are 800 breeds of cattle recognized worldwide, and they fall into 2 main types, according to Wikipedia, just a couple days ago, yesterday, okay? So 800 breeds of cattle, I think we would agree, are probably the same kind of animal. Noah might have had 10 cows on the ark, or 20, and we now have 800 breeds. I don't know what he had on the ark. I'm not asking for mine to be taught at taxpayer expense. But if you think a cow and a pine tree are related, and an elephant and a bacteria, I think that's a stretch of anybody's imagination. I have some pictures here of, for instance, the different cats in the cat family. There's a jag lion, the cross between a jaguar and a lion. So possibly the jaguar and a lion are the same biblical kind. There's a bobcat lynx cross. There are 30 recognized breeds of chickens in the world, and it says the jungle fowl is the original bird from which all varieties and strains of domesticated chickens are derived. Man has developed domesticated chickens. Some lay more eggs, some have more meat, some live longer, some produce more offspring. They can select for a certain characteristic that they want, but they're still a chicken. And a 5-year-old knows that. They could recognize right away the difference between a chicken and a pine tree. Why you can't, I don't know. But
What do
they
you mean
are
I
different.
can't? I just read to you the law of monophyly, which shows that you can't, there's always going to be a chicken. It's never going to not be a chicken. All its descendants, no matter how much they change, they're going to still be chickens. Why? Because of the law of monophyly. And those chickens are still going to be neonate birds. They're still going to be birds. Not the bird kind, because the Bible doesn't describe what a kind is. Matter of fact, it says there's all sorts of birds, and it doesn't describe what a sort is either. But we have the idea that we have all kinds of birds. So we have kinds within kinds, which sounds like it's describing the same thing as clades, but the difference being, and this is the important thing that you keep missing, is that there has to be a point where they're not all related. So it says all kinds of birds, implying that there's different kinds of birds. So there were individual creations, yet they're all birds. So why are they not the bird kind?
Well,
So can you give me me a distinction between kinds?
You mentioned the law of monophyly. What is the ancestor between the pine tree and the elephant? What did that ancestor look like, and why didn't it always bring forth after its kind? Why did it diversify? It did. You mean an elephant and a pine tree are still the same kind?
That's right. They're still eukaryotes.
Okay. Well, I can help you recognize. If you get confused any time, I can show you which is the tree and which is an elephant. I think probably.
I can do that too. See, you've described evolutionary principles for the last 5 minutes. I've no contest with that. I'm waiting for the creationist principles to come in.
I think I've told you several times. The Bible says if they can bring forth, they are the same kind.
Unless they've now speciated. Would you, and you accept that? I've seen in some of your other videos, you accept that speciation happens so they can no longer bring forth.
Speciation happens, but it's within very strict limits. There are 200
what are the
species.
limits?
Well, there are 200 species of squirrels. Someday there may be 500 species of squirrels. That doesn't
And what are the
prove
limits?
squirrel. I think the limit is called squirrel. They're always going to be what's
Well,
called a
Because
squirrel.
of the law of monophyly, they're always going to be eukaryotes too. They're always going to be mammals. They're always going to be eutherians. None of those things are going to change.
So
You still belong to every clade your evolutionary ancestors did. There was no point where you stopped being what they were. You can't grow out of your ancestry.
So I am still a pine tree.
Did I say or imply in any way that you were descended from a pine tree?
You said I'm still a eukaryote, so are the pine trees.
Are
so
you telling me that you
I
are not a eukaryote?
Are you a pine tree?
Did I tell you that all eukaryotes are pine trees?
What the
Yes, so are you a
fuck?
pine tree?
I told you. Can somebody back up the tape? When did I tell Kent Hovind that all eukaryotes are pine trees?
No, I didn't. You said no.
What
You
he
didn't
said,
say. You said.
what he said for clarification, what he said was that all pine trees are eukaryotic. They're all eukaryotes, but not all eukaryotes are pine trees. Correct?
Okay, I understand.
Okay.
But your
Okay,
ancestor.
so at no point in your evolutionary history did a eukaryote give birth to a non-eukaryote. So, and the same thing applies throughout. So all the hundreds of times that during the last 20 years you kept saying a dog never produces a non-dog. I'm sorry, that's always been wrong. That's always been a straw man. That has never been a correct criticism of evolution. That has been a description of an evolutionary law which you have failed to understand these decades.
No, I think I completely understand it. Dogs always
Just
produce.
demonstrated
Hold
other, and
on,
will
Aaron,
now
Aaron.
do so again.
All right,
Let him get it out.
I will say it again. You haven't understood it in 20 years, but dogs do always produce dogs. Do you know of an exception to that?
Because of the evolutionary law of monophyly, that is true. And dogs remain canoidian carnivores. They never became a non-carnivore when they produced the first dogs. Still a carnivore. Still a member of every one of its parental kids. Same thing with cats. Phalloidian carnivores are still carnivores. Dogs, cats, both carnivores.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Are pine trees carnivores?
Because carnivora is limited to a subset of mammals and trees are not even animals, no.
But you think elephants and pine trees and dogs are related?
Are still eukaryotes, yes.
So, but at some point they became carnivores. Something happened.
Yes, that's correct. And I've got a series of videos explaining the evolutionary stages of that, if anybody listening to this cares. It's called The Systematic Classification of Life, where I go through some of the major clades. We're up to episode 24, and we've just now gotten to mammals. So there's another dozen or so videos in that series at least to come.
That ought to be exciting. Okay, so pine trees and elephants and dogs are related. At some point, the ancestor of whatever that ancestor looked like, diversified, and obviously elephants and dogs and pine trees look different today and behave differently and are now in certainly different species. I would assume different families and maybe
families,
even kingdoms. Well, they're different kingdoms, plant and animal kingdom, aren't they?
The families and kingdoms really don't matter. Those are Linnaean constructs, and they're not really applicable. So the only thing that has a hard definition, or the thing with the hardest definition is species. So everything else, all of these other taxonomic groupings, these grades that Linnaeus came up with, they serve only as signposts anymore, because he wasn't aware of how many increments there were between each of these different levels.
So Carolus Linnaeus was not aware that a pine tree was different than an elephant?
Let's try this. Obviously, you're trying to misrepresent this as much as you can, because
No,
obviously I never said anything like that. However, you did mention the 5-year-old could tell them apart. Now, what were the examples that you gave? A dog, an elephant, and a pine tree?
Do you think a 5-year-old could tell the difference between those?
Yeah, I think a 5-year-old doing the old Sesame Street game of one of these things is not like the other could probably pretty easily depict that the pine tree is the odd one out. Would you agree with that?
Very good. You're slowly getting it. There's hope. Go ahead. Keep going.
Okay, I can't imagine that anybody, even in your following, could possibly think that you're the one that understands this and I'm not.
I think they all believe I understand it and you don't. But go ahead.
Okay. Using the same description, you can find other things that are closer and eliminate the dog from the elephant by finding things that are closer to those, using that same simple principle. Once you realize derived synapomorphies, which things matter, which things don't. You can't decide that a certain type of parrot isn't a parrot because it's green, for example. You can't make up arbitrary rules like that. If you want to categorize any collective, you have to find the traits that are already contained within every member universally accepted in that set before you can decide whether some new addition belongs there or not. Do you understand that?
Well, let's say we're going to accept the traits of an animal to be something.
Okay, so you didn't answer that question.
Well, you've asked me about 14 questions here and
that,
left them
that
unanswered.
one question. You didn't answer that one question.
Well, let's
You
go
came
back
up
to
with
the original.
you've got another question instead of the answer.
Well,
But
we
that,
still
that's
have.
all right. It doesn't matter.
No,
Go
no,
ahead. You change the
it's-
subject however you want.
Okay. Says, why does Aaron insist they argue with its own Roman belief rather than seeing what the others have to argue with their own belief? What belief? Okay. He makes some points because he rules them out of his mind. He refuses to accept them.
Go back and listen to this tape, Aaron. You changed the subject repeatedly. Your original
No, I'm
question.
still on the same subject, and you're
Okay.
trying to derail. But go ahead. Change it to
not.
whatever
All right,
subject.
how about we do this? Because there's a lot of crosstalk. Aaron, ask your question again, very directly, very succinctly, and then we'll have Kent directly answer that single solitary question, not going back to anything that's been previously discussed up to date. Just what question did you just ask that you want him to have a direct answer to?
Well, no, I didn't get to answer the very first one yet about what is a species or what is a biblical kind. I'm trying to answer
let's
that.
start there, because that is the same.
I think they're all related.
Topic has not changed. Yeah. It's the same thing I've been talking about since the beginning. He thinks it's multiple subjects. It's not. It's just that he has no clue what he's talking about. So please, let's get back to the one and only subject we've been discussing so far. Identify kinds as distinguished from other kinds. Give me a couple of different species, for example, that we can identify as being different created kinds. Things that ideally scientists would consider closely related. Not as far apart as you can find them, but something that scientists would say, well, these are both in this group, and you say, no, these are both individual creations. Give me that example.
Okay, I have in front of me a picture that I got from the internet 2 days ago showing carnivora, which includes panthers, the skunk, the otter, the familiar dog, the Canis familiaris and Canis lupus, the wolf, and they have lines drawn connecting them all to a common ancestor. And I would like to point out that in the panther kind, there are, according to A2ZAnimals.com, 7 different subspecies of leopard which differ in their appearance. The African leopard is the most common. I would suspect those 7 different leopards had a common ancestor, and it was a cat. 7 different subspecies.
Okay, so let me ask for clarification purposes. When I say kind, and you say kind, we are obviously talking about something different.
Correct.
Now, you are describing, though you aren't aware of it, you are describing a clade. And when I use the word kind as distinguished from clade, the only difference is that the kind begins with a special creation. So a kind will not be part of another larger kind. You follow me?
I don't think the cat kind is part of the pine tree kind.
Okay, so the answer was a yes or no question about whether you follow this. Evidently, you do not. Do you understand that a kind is the beginning of a clade, the crown of a clade, from which there is no commonality? So that these two, if you wanted to start with squirrel, if you want to call it a kind, then God created 2 squirrels, and then he separately created chipmunks and everything that is squirrel-like within that division of rodents, and then the parent category of rodents.
Yeah, I said I've never studied to see if a chipmunk and a squirrel could have a common ancestor. What is their chromosome number? Is it possible they had a common ancestor?
Chromosomes.
That's
maybe.
what the phylogeny challenge is. It's to establish what a kind is, and a kind is not a clade. So if you're talking about parental groups from which that include all of their descendants, and that's what you're describing, then you're
Sure.
describing clades, not kinds. The difference between a clade and a kind is that the kind is a clade that begins with a special creation. So give me an example of two different kinds, two different special creations where those clades began with those special creations, but which science would consider closely related or within a parental clade.
Would you agree that the 7 different leopards of the world probably had a common ancestor and it was a leopard?
No.
You don't agree with that? Okay.
Well, no,
Well,
I agree that the leopards would have a common ancestor that was a leopard, and that all panthers also have a common ancestor with other cats, and that macarodonts also have a common ancestor with panthers and felines, because there's 3 different distinctions for cats, and that
Right.
the nympherids also are related to cats with a common ancestor, and that we get to further down, we also have viverids included, and then we also have canoids, which are the dogs, the bears, the weasels, the seals. All of these are genetically linked. It's not just lines on paper. And if you think that phylogenetics is just drawing lines on paper, then yeah, we need to have a long talk, and this is it. So at what point could you show me 2 different created kinds that don't share a common ancestor?
Okay. I think the created kind, let's take the pine tree leopard example here, since we're on that. You believe they had a common ancestor. I do not. I think pine trees, I don't know how many varieties, I didn't look it up. How many pine trees are there? A lot. I mean, there's the loblolly, the longleaf, the gee whiz, there's probably 1,000 varieties of pine trees. Now, whether they had a common ancestor or not is interesting. I don't know, but let's assume that they did. If we can get 1,000 varieties of pine trees from an original pine tree, that is not evidence that a pine tree and a leopard are related.
It is evidence, however, that all of these conifers had a common ancestor, is it not?
I agree. They probably did.
So can you find me, same question, repeating the same question again, which you clearly you have demonstrated you do not understand the question, so I'm phrasing it again.
Okay.
I want you to give me not just another description of a clade, which you mistakenly referred to as a kind. No, that's not what a kind is. That's a clade. A kind is where the clade begins with a special creation. Can you give me 2 special creations that science would consider to be in the same parent category?
Probably the 4 different. I don't know if I had my next picture here shows the 4 different species of skunks. I mean, because this picture showed a skunk and a leopard as being related.
Yes, because skunks are mustelids, which were a subset of canoidea, and then your panthers, again, a subset of Phyloidea, both within order Carnivora. So
Sure.
are you suggesting then that God created skunks but did not create any of the other weasels around it, that all other mustelids, or did he create a common ancestor of mustelids? And then we have to look at the common ancestor of mustelids along with the other related groups within Canoidea. Is a skunk your created kind, or is mustelid your created kind? Which is it?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think this textbook shows the otter also is in here next to the skunk as being related. There are 13 varieties of otters, and they have
so
a line.
I gave you a hint that you needed to look up the phylogeny challenge before you address this, and you don't even know what the phylogeny challenge is.
The phylogeny, as I've clearly demonstrated, is drawing lines on paper.
Phylogeny challenge.
Yeah, Kent, let's try to clarify. He's not talking just about phylogeny. He's asking you, do you know what his phylogeny challenge is, which is something he has issued, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, dealing with the original kinds for what would be the beginning of a clade for the creationist point of view along those lines?
Yeah, I set it up so that most people who visit my channel would see the phylogeny challenge video first thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. You want to know what the original created kinds were and how that is distinguished from the other created kinds, and what prevents them from being connected. Is that
No. The
Okay.
second part of the question is irrelevant.
Okay.
Yeah, if you can show me created kinds, then it wouldn't matter how that clade diversifies after that, or the number of subset clades within that. Because you can have new clades erupt within those old clades, and they're still going to belong to the parent clade that they always were. And the same goes through entire evolutionary phylogenies, every one of them. They remain belonging to every ancestral category that their ancestors ever did. There was never became a non-dog. That argument is invalid. So show me two created kinds that science would consider within the same parental clade.
Hold it. If they never became something other than their parents,
because of the law of monophily that I just described. It's an evolutionary law.
So if there was something then that was the ancestor of pine trees and elephants where we started this conversation, obviously something happened. And what this is, nobody's ever observed this. See, science, I guess my definition of science is very different than yours. Science is things we observe, study, test, and demonstrate.
And that is exactly my definition as well.
Okay, then so far every farmer in the world...
And we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate that the most primitive and simplest plants are in fact single-celled, and that they are eukaryotes.
And you think
and if we just teach the facts, if we teach the observable, testable, verifiable facts about this, then we come up with what Linnaeus came up with when he discovered a tree of life that should not exist. He was a creationist. He had no idea, no concept of evolution. In his time, species were immutable. You couldn't derive a new species, and yet he was seeing a tree such as you're currently describing. You don't realize it's cladistics that you're talking about, but that's what it is. He didn't have a concept of that, and he couldn't explain it. That's why he turned to the scientific community and challenged them to explain, why is he seeing this?
So did Linnaeus think that pine trees and elephants were related?
No. He was a creationist, but he did think that apes and people were the same thing, indistinguishable. And he challenged the scientific community to find him a generic difference that accords to the laws of cladistic, or not cladistics, of taxonomy. And they couldn't. So they arbitrarily created a class of Pongo, just to ease their own conscience about it. But then, of course, in the last 20 years or so, genetics has confirmed that there is no such thing as a separate family for the non-human apes. We are still apes.
Okay, I think it was dictionary.com or whatever, the word definition of cladistics, since you're trying to equate that with kinds. A method of classification.
I'm not. I want to clarify. You are the one who is doing that.
No.
Distinguished. No, yes. You are using the word. You're using the word kind to describe clades, and you are habitually avoiding the actual definition. A kind would be a clade that begins with a special creation. I distinguish these. You're the one equating them. Do not accuse me of making your mistake.
Well, let me just read you the dictionary definition of cladistics, okay, where clades come from. A method of classification of animals and plants according to the proportion of measurable characteristics that they have in common. It is assumed that the higher the proportion of characteristics the two organisms share, the more recently they diverge from a common ancestor. So cladistics
that would not be a scientific definition. I can help you with that. The scientific definition is a classification, as I previously described, with all of the criteria that each of these groups should have. You have to make a total tally of everything that is included within that group before you decide whether something else belongs there. But the key word, which is not in your layman's dictionary, is that the cladistics is a classification that includes all its descendants. It doesn't make special exceptions for certain ones. For example, the clade animal, which is formerly known as metazoa, is multicellular eukaryotes with an internal digestive tract. But this is the simplest definition. That's what an animal is. That applies to you, right?
I definitely have an internal digestive tract. Yes, sir, I do.
Yes, and you're a multicellular eukaryote. So by definition, then, you are an animal. So there was no point in your evolutionary ancestry that an animal gave birth to a non-animal. Because of the law of monophily, you are still an animal, and you always will be.
But hold it, an elephant and a pine tree, something happened. One's no longer an animal.
Well, let's just
clarify
this, because I think
they're common ancestor.
And I think Aaron's asked this like multiple times, and I want to make sure that everybody gets equal time on this. So this for clarification purposes, Aaron, real quickly, can you explain what you mean by monophilic clade, but specifically towards Kent's kind definitions? What I think we need to isolate is that all the things you've talked about, the pine tree and mammals, are still eukaryotic, right? They're different kinds of eukaryotes, right? But they're still eukaryotic. And they came from something in evolutionary theory that was non-eukaryotic at one point, right? They have a shared
We
common
don't even have
ancestry.
to get into the genetics of the fossil record at this point. I mean, there's or embryology or any of the other things that confirm phylogenetics. We're just looking at the simple characters. We're looking at what careless Linnaeus would look at. So the commonality between the pine tree and the elephant is that they're eukaryotes.
Right.
Neither one started from an animal. Being a eukaryote doesn't mean animal. So it means it's referring to a cell that has a nucleus, right? And so that never changed. Now, at some later point, after the division between plants on one side and the animals on the other, then we have this. But then we have many further divisions before we get to trees, and then conifers, and then pine trees. Just like we have many further divisions before we get to eutherian mammals and elephants and so forth.
Okay, so can you address that specifically for the audience, please? Because you do agree that trees and animals are all eukaryotic, right, Kent?
Correct. Well, they all have a cell with a nucleus. That is correct. Plant cells and animal cells, they're very different in many other ways, but yes, they both have a nucleus. So that proves we're related. So because we both are eukaryotes, therefore elephants and pine trees are related. I'm just completely baffled at how a grown person could believe that.
I just mentioned that there are other categories that we can use. We're only right now looking at Linnaean characteristics.
Sure.
We haven't got into genetics or embryology or the fossil record or any of that. We're just looking at the characteristics right now.
Okay,
So
I would say
we have to consider. We want to make sure that we don't adopt a belief at the onset, because of course that would be dishonest, and it would be dishonest to throw out any evidence that flies against whatever belief you want to adopt at the onset. So we're better off both not having a belief to start with.
Okay,
and
well let's start.
Look at the facts and the possibilities.
Okay, let's look at the facts. Pine trees are made up of cells, all of which, originally, the ones that are still living anyway, have a nucleus. The dead ones, of course, the internal tree, the tree no longer has that. But and elephants are made up of cells, and they have nucleus. I could look at that and say, this proves we have a common designer, because this system works really good.
You don't have to go that far. You don't even have to. You can construct an entire tree of life, as Linnaeus did, without making that assumption. And you still come to the same inescapable fact.
You could also construct a tree of life and say, wow, look at the designer gave all this stuff the ability to reproduce
varieties. Then again,
varieties.
You're making an assumption that is unjustified. We have to look at possibilities as well. Okay. So in order to say, and I know that you know that not everything is possible, because you've said many times about things that you don't understand that you think are impossible. So you know that we can't just say that anything is possible. You know that there's a limit, that there are things that are not possible. So we have to look at, before we can say that something is possible, we have to verify that the possibility exists. There has to be a precedent or a parallel or a verified phenomenon to indicate that such possibility exists. Now, we know that evolution happens. We've seen how it happens. We know various different aspects about it. We know quite a lot, actually, about the evolutionary process and the evolutionary history and so forth. And so we know that these things occur. They're observable, demonstrable, verifiable, repeatable directly. Now, do we have a possibility for magic imaginary friend using a conjuration spell?
You have already said several things which I would have to disagree with. We do not know that evolution happens by my definition.
Okay, so you're saying that the definition that we've already had.
Let him finish out his answer.
In your mind, you know evolution happens. In my mind, I have a different definition of that. I think variations happen within the same kind, but they're limited to that kind. For
but there's no definition of kind still given. That was the core of what we've been talking about for the last half hour, is trying to get you to define a kind as distinguished from a clade. Now, I've given the definition, and I've called you to give examples of that, and you failed to do so. What you have instead done was deny the very definition of evolution as being a fact. You would agree, and you have described already how you accept certain aspects of evolution, and not just change within a species. You're talking about changes between species, which means you accept macroevolution as well. I know you defined it as something else because you have to use equivocation. But just because you use the wrong definitions doesn't mean that your definitions are right. It means the scientific community has established what these definitions are, and you don't get to change them just for your audience.
You don't get to put words in my mouth. I do not believe in macroevolution. By my definition.
But you described what you described that you accept. What you said you accept meets the definition that scientists give for what macroevolution is. Microevolution is variation within a species. Macroevolution is variation between species, and this includes speciation, and you accept that speciation happens. So you accept that by definition, the actual, real definition, and not the false one you made up, that you accept what is actually really defined as macroevolution.
Let's make sure that Ken has equal time here, Aron, if you can.
That would be wonderful.
I want to make sure Ken.
Okay.
Please, we're trying to make sure you have equal time. But
all right, just tell me when to speak.
I want to make sure you guys are talking about the same things, and I understand both your guys' positions. I've had many conversations with both of you gentlemen. Aron is explaining it from a very scientific and precise way of looking at it. And what he's asking you is for you to define your terms in a way that is from a creationist point of view, and they don't mesh. And I think that's why we're having a communication failure here. When you're talking about speciation, Kent, what do you mean by macroevolution? What do you mean by speciation? How much of it do you accept? Is that something along the lines of what you want to know, Aron, as far as your questioning?
Well, that's where I don't think anybody's ever given a really hard definition of species. Is a dog and a wolf a different species, yet they're the same kind of animal? Is a dog and a coyote and a wolf? They're different species, Canis lupus, Canis domesticus, but they're the same kind. So yes, I do accept that speciation happens, but who is getting, like they decided there's a new species of finch on the Galapagos Islands now, because one flew over to a different island and crossbred with a different variety of finch. It still produced a bird. It still produced a finch. So if just because some group of scientists decide to call that a new species, that is not evidence for evolution. That's wishful thinking. That's SpongeBob imagination stuff. I agree. Variations happen, and I agree new species could be created if somebody wants to call that a new species. I don't know if the 200 species of squirrels are I think they have the same kind of animal. So yeah, I think the word species is too flexible. I think the biblical word kind, able to bring forth, so those 200 species of squirrels can probably bring forth babies. The squirrel and a pine tree cannot. They're different kinds. Squirrel and an elephant cannot. Whether squirrel and chipmunk, I don't know. That's a good question. I'll do some research on that, Aron. I'll get back with you. I don't know about chipmunks, if they're in the same kind or not. Good question. I will definitely work on that. But I think I could demonstrate that a squirrel and a pine tree are not the same kind. And if you choose to believe they got a common ancestor, that is your religion. There's no evidence for that. No evidence at all. That's a religion you believe in, and that's fine. This is America. You can have any religion you want, but you should admit it's a religion and quit calling it science. That's not science.
So the evidence that we have, both genetic and character-based, that we have these commonalities, and in addition to what we've seen in the fossil record, these are all the facts, and I think you would even agree with this definition of evidence that it is a body of objectively verifiable facts, which are either exclusively, they're positively indicative of or exclusively concordant with one available position over any other. And these would confirm these beyond reasonable doubt. Would you accept that that is the definition of evidence, or that is a working definition for the purpose of this discussion?
Well, yes, determining what a fact is. You mentioned that the genetic commonality, I think it's a fact, but whether that proves a common ancestor or common creator is the question. And you mentioned the fossil record.
You're interrupting him actually at this right now. So hang on.
Well,
I promise we'll get back to it. Go ahead, Ken.
I'll go back.
I want you to finish your statements because I've been noticing both of you have been interrupting a little bit. So to be fair to everybody, Ken, finish what you were saying and then let Aron respond, please.
Several times he has mentioned that the fossil record is somehow evidence to support his theory that they have a common ancestor. I would contend there is no such thing as a fossil record. There are bones in the dirt indicating they died. But why would you think a bone from the dirt could do something which no animal today could do, which is produce something? If you find squirrel fossils in the dirt, you're going to say, this is a squirrel, and it produced squirrels. That's all they produce today. But yet you think a bone in the dirt is capable of doing something no animal today can do, which is produce something other than its fundamentally 5th grade or 5-year-old level kind of animal.
Once again, because of the law of monophyly, I clearly do not believe that anything ever becomes not what its ancestors were. I've explained this repeatedly. So I do not believe that. Hybridization, by the way, a finch crossing over to another island and then hybridizing with other finches is not speciation. It can be, but it's very, very limited. Very, very limited. The vast majority of speciation events are just built up of genetic diversity. We have 4 different types of speciation that are now logged. And hybridization doesn't even account for any of these 4. So these are just build-ups of genetic diversity in different isolated groups, or even emerging within a same group.
Okay, well, let me ask you a simple question then. Does this buildup of genetic diversity have any limits?
What limits would you propose? What limits might you be thinking of?
Okay, let's take limits on size as an example. Is there any, do you believe there's a limit to the size of dogs? Is it possible for dogs to ever become as big as a blue whale? There are animals as big as a blue whale, like the blue whale. So is it possible for an animal, is there a limit on size? Could you get a dog as big as Texas?
Godzilla is not possible, for example.
Very good, very good. So there are limits to this variation.
Yeah.
And okay, wonderful.
Okay.
Well,
So what you're telling me is that there are structural limits imposed by gravity, but not actually by biodiversity. So there's no limit to biodiversity that you've yet given, only structural limitations according to physics, perhaps.
Well, no, okay, well, correct. Now, why don't we get dogs as big as elephants? Because
of structural difficulties. When they exceed 200 pounds, they are beyond their ability to withstand to grow any larger because of the structure they already have. They have to adapt a more improved structure in order to exceed that size. And the same thing goes with the reason the dinosaurs were so big was because they had a system already built in that allowed that to happen without a backlash. They had avian respiration, so they had hollow bones that they could breathe through, which made them far more energetic and powerful than we are. So that dinosaurs and mammals of equal mass, the dinosaur will excel because it'll be lighter and faster and stronger.
Well, you said the dog is limited and can't become as big as an elephant. There are animals as big as an elephant. It's called an elephant.
There are animals that are as big as an elephant, but they have to, as I just said, and I'm going to have to repeat again, the dog would then have to have a new adaptation to account for the larger size, because we also know bears come from dogs, and bears they don't come from dogs, they come from the common ancestor, but bears are genetically linked to dogs, and bears have they don't have the digigrade gait and the hyper speed that dogs have, different derivations from the commonality.
Well, in your religion, they're different.
They're not. It's not a religion because it's not faith-based, and it's not a belief system. And it doesn't require belief. It doesn't teach belief. It discourages belief in favor of critical analysis and peer review.
Okay, well, Aaron, bears produce bears, dogs produce dogs. You say they came from a common ancestor. That is a belief. We never observed
Why is
that.
it a belief to see a genetic link? If you've got evidence that shows that genetics are there, that dogs and bears and seals and mustelids are all canoidean carnivores, and they're all genetically linked. If you can do a parental test using the genetics, the same as you say a Maury Povich, you are the father. We show the genetic link. There is the evidence, not faith like you have, not just going on a book of old fables like you have. We have actual genetic evidence to confirm this.
So you have genetic evidence that a dog and a bear are related, and what is that evidence exactly? Because they have similar DNA?
Told you.
No, you didn't.
You said
you said the word genetics is not, I want to be specific. What exactly makes you think that something was the father? You are the father of the bear and the dog. What exactly would make you think that? What part of the DNA structure? Is it the number of chromosomes? Is it the length of the chromosomes? Is it the arrangement of CATG? Exactly what is this evidence that you're claiming is evidence for this ancestry, the parental aspect of the ancestor of dog and wolf, or dog and bear?
I explained this in a series I explained this in a video called Caniform Carnivore Cladogram Construction. I like alliteration, I can't help it. And there's a backup to this that also covers the cat side of the family tree. And these are in a series of videos, a five video series called Falsifying Phylogeny, which explains a number of other evolutionary principles, including the evolutionary laws that I just mentioned.
Well, can you just give me a 2-minute summary here? What is your reason?
It is as I just explained, and I'm repeating the explanation again. It's just like doing a parental test where you're matching the commonality to see whether this person is the father or that person is the father. You're just extrapolating further back.
And I'll ask you again, maybe you'll get it this time. What exactly are you looking at to determine the parental?
I answered twice. I will answer a third time. Maybe you will be the one to get it this time, as I had it since the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we are just like a parental paternity test, where you're using a genetic matchup, right? Codon for codon, right? You're looking for the commonality between these genetic lines, genetic lineages. You're also looking at wherever there are applicable ERVs and such. Whatever, I can't remember the other term, whatever other commonalities take factor in genetic comparison. You're doing a genome sequence comparison to identify the ancestry, just like you would trace whether you are Danish in ancestry or Jamaican or what have you. It's the same concept.
So you're saying someone did a genome sequencing of a dog and a bear and found out that they have a common ancestor based on
Not just
ERV?
someone, lots of people. Because the thing about science is that it has to be peer reviewed, which means that somebody does these tests and say, okay, I did these tests, and then other people have to go back and duplicate those tests and confirm that they get similar results, or they can confirm that this is what actually happens.
So you mentioned we should start with no belief whatsoever and just look at the evidence. Let's assume that we do study the bear and the dog and find out they have similar ERVs, they have similar genetic sequences. What then would you conclude from that? Would you consider the possibility that maybe the same author wrote the code?
The possibility, key word. Once again, I repeat, and I have to do that a lot here, that in order to establish whether there is a possibility, we have to show a precedent or a parallel or a verified phenomenon indicating that that possibility exists. And we have had, by your own admission, we have had speciation occur. We have seen evolution happening in real time, not just in the fossil record, but also in the lab, live. So we know it occurs. And then we look at the characters of the simple physical characteristics, well, what the hell? You look between the description of bears and of dogs, and then we look in the fossil record, we also find bear dogs and dog bears. Literally, seriously. We find things, bear dogs and dog bears, both. And then we have common ancestors basal to each that would, their physiology looks a little bit more like a wolverine. But basically it's the common ancestor where it's still plantigrade, still like a dog, or it's still plantigrade like a bear, but still has a long tail like a dog.
Okay.
So we have a number of different facts. We have a body of different types of evidence, different bodies of evidence that all concord with each other. And you want me to consider the possibility, as yet unestablished, that a magic imaginary man went poof.
All right, so let's try to get this a little back on track a little bit. So Aaron, you're saying there's a consilience of all these different branches of not just genetics, not just codons, not just ERVs, but comparative homologies and anatomy and a whole bunch of different other things. And Kent's basically saying, forget all that. There's a probability or possibility that it could be a common designer. That's
exactly.
Basically
so in the
balance,
description where he asked for my two items of evidence for or my two best examples of evidence for evolution, I gave phylogenetics, which I've been trying to explain, and he's actually been explaining, but he doesn't understand that is what he's explaining. And then the other thing, which is that we actually know things to be true, demonstrably, verifiably true about evolution, where nobody knows anything at all about any magic imaginary designer. There is no literally no possibility to consider, because he can't even show me a kind, which would have to be the most basic thing any creationist should cough up at the onset before we even talk about this. If you want to talk about all animals being created, you'd have to show me which ones are the ones that are created. If you're going to accept that some degree of phylogeny applies, where's the cutoff point? That's what I'm asking. That's what the phylogeny challenge is.
Yeah, make sure Kent is able to address this specifically and give me equal time on this. So Kent, he's kind of asked.
I'm done for now.
You're done with it? Can't take no more?
I'll finish this later.
Okay. So what do you think of the whole thing?
Think Kent's stupid.
Yeah, this is just like a whole fucking ridiculous conversation, in my opinion.
Yeah. How he thinks evolution is a religion, I don't know.
I don't think so, because evolution is science.
Yeah.
And that's fact, not belief or faith. or anything like that.
And how he thinks that they think that the elephants came from pine trees.
Yeah, that too. That's pretty stupid.
Like, you think an elephant gave birth to a pine tree?
Mhm.
When did I say that?
Yeah, that shit makes no fucking sense whatsoever.
Alright, we'll finish this another day when our brains have healed. See you in 2 hours for the podcast. Bye, everybody.
Bye.